in this session, you're going to hear 3 Ignite-style talks, right? They'll come up here, give short, focused, and very disciplined experiments that they had worked on, either as a product within the organization or as the organization as a whole, right? Each of them will walk us through that experiment, why they chose it. They'll tell us why they chose it, how they structured it, what has happened, and what they learned, very importantly, and what we all can learn from it. It's not theory here, it's hypothesis. So I'm not here to summarize, so I'll be out of your face in a minute. As you listen, I actually encourage you to hold one question, and I'll come back to this many times. Hold one question in your mind. If you had to test one revenue experiment over the next 90 days, both from all that they'll be sharing here today, as well as all you've been thinking, what will that revenue experiment be, and how are you going to structure it based on all that we've been hearing? Good. So let's begin. Our first speaker is Caleb Maru from Tech Safari. Now, what I appreciate about his experiment is that he did not begin with, we need more revenue, or, we need to do more. It actually began with a very sharp question, which is, where is the leverage point on what we're actually working? And that shift is often what separates experimentation from, scrambling. So I join you for the next few minutes to welcome Caleb from Tech Safari.
Awesome. Thank you, Dara. Hey, everyone. How are we doing? A bit louder. I need a bit more engagement. How are we doing, everyone? There we go. Before I dive in and tell you a bit about me and what we're doing, I'm curious, who here works in media, directly in media? Hands up. Okay. And then keep your hand up if you are building or working on a media product. Okay, cool. So quite a few of you, probably like 1/3 of you. Awesome. We're going to talk a little bit today about frameworks for building products and what we use at our company and what's worked for us. And then we're going to apply it to a real situation. So that's what this session will be about. Before that, who am I? I'm Caleb. I am the founder and CEO of a company called Tech Safari. We started off as media, telling the story of technology in Africa to a global audience. Since then, since we started 3 years ago, we've really evolved into a company that's building products and services for tech businesses and businesses across Africa to scale. So we started with our media platform, Tech Safari, that reaches 1.5 million people a month and is predominantly known for its newsletter. We now have an events service where we do events for companies across the globe. 2 weeks ago, we did a big event for the UN, World Bank, and GIZ, focused on agri-tech, as an example. And now we help different companies scale across Africa through this sort of like building these networks out and building products and services for them. So that's us, some of the companies we've worked with. But before that, I really got my roots in technology in both across Africa, but also Australia too, where I built a company called Entry Level. It was an ed tech. It scaled to over 100,000 users in the end and got acquired at the start of last year. So a lot of experience in like both building products, but also scaling them, and now bringing that to building services here. So that's me. So, before this actually, let's go back. Who knows what an MVP is? An MVP? Okay. Does someone want to tell me what an MVP is? Say it again. I love that, but that's not exactly the term I'm looking for here. Who wants to try again? Over there. Perfect. Minimum viable product. In technology, this is crucial. You don't really have the money or time to go build a fully fledged tech stack that's perfect. You usually build something very quickly, quite cheaply, and in a way that helps you scale it quickly to see if it even works. This is terminology we see a lot in the tech space. In tech, you'd be told, okay, as you're building a product, build the minimum version. We actually don't do MVPs at Tech Safari. The philosophy that we use is MVTs, which stands for minimum viable test. Sorry, this is a bit jargony. I usually present this to like tech audiences. But what a minimum viable test is, starting with an MVP, like when we think about building a product, we usually overdevelop too early. If you're building a media product like a podcast, it takes actually a lot of time, effort, money to actually build something like this. I think the days of sitting back and working on a project for 3 months before you launch are kind of over. We really need to be able to move quickly, especially in this space. And then we believe that ideas or viable products are better validated by sales, not surveys, and not feedback. And I also think now you have the opportunity to build AI. Like with AI, you can build anything like really in minutes or days. So is everyone with me so far on MVPs and how we're thinking about MVTs, which is minimum viable tests? Yeah? Okay. So the MVT principles are, what can I test right now to understand if I'm working on the right thing? And the framework is not, is this good quality? It's literally, are we making money? You're trying to find ways to invalidate your idea. So you might have an idea that like a specific research project is the right thing to build. In building that, you're trying to see, can I invalidate the viability of this idea, or does it actually work? So you're trying to see if your idea is a bad one, not support that your idea is a good one. Thinking a bit more like a scientist. Inside an MVT, I'm going to actually give you an example that we tried out 2 years ago. This is a bit of a funny story. We wanted to build a cash-flowing business line of our business that made recurring revenue. We were doing these sort of events and media sponsorships. Like, we want something more frequent. So what's the quickest way I can launch a test to see what version of this can work? So the idea was that founders and executives kept approaching us saying, you guys make great content. Can you make it for us? Can you build some sort of agency model? And so we said, okay, if we can get 3 founders of companies paying us $1,000 a month for content, that seems like success. That seems like an early indication that people will put their money down for this product or service. So what we did was, here we go. So the idea is you actually want to do this, like a question we always ask is, that's a great idea, that's a great project. What's the 20-minute version of that? What's a version of that you can put out into the world in 20 minutes? Create in 20 minutes and put out there. So our version was, let's write like one pager on the product that we want to present, which is like basically content as a service. Let's make a Typeform survey so people who are interested can sign up and give us their details. And let's create a Stripe link so that we can get paid. These 3 things was all it took to really test, okay, does an agency work for us? We launched it in about 30 minutes. I wrote a post on LinkedIn. It did pretty well. And I also sent it to about 10 to 20 people on WhatsApp for quick feedback. And we posted it 30 minutes. So that's about like 50 minutes in, we have a test of a potential product. The feedback was, what happened inside the MVT was we had 12 Typeform signups, 9 paying customers, and 9,000 in revenue in about 10 days, which was enough to actually use this money to go build out the business line and see if we could actually validate this model. See, we didn't actually hire anyone for this job until we got paying customers. We didn't actually spend time designing an agency until we had people bought in with their money. And so this is really how we think about how to design revenue experiments. Like, how can you test if someone will prepay for something because it's that much of a need that they will pay for it? So then the next steps was we hired a team to deliver this. We ran a cohort of 9 companies and compiled the learnings. And then we had an official launch. Sorry about the slides. They're a bit weirdly formatted on this screen. The funny story is we actually used this to build a whole agency called Flywheel. And we shut it down after 3 months. So there's a difference between a viable idea that makes money and a good business. And we decided we did not want to be a content agency. It was way too demanding. We didn't have the team for it. And we wanted to stick to like events, media, and really like other products and services that are higher scale and higher leverage. So I hope that like shows how we think about building or testing ideas. I want to show you one more example. I think we have time for that, right? Yeah. Which is Tech Safari Insights. So we actually did this with MDIF. As part of that program. The idea is, I really hate that that's all together. Sorry, it's not presenting well, but let me read that to you. The hypothesis was we were hosting our major event towards the end of the year, towards the end of last year. It was a summit that was focused on expansion leaders across Africa. So we had Netflix fly in from Amsterdam to attend, we had Binance there, we had Uber, Yango, a lot of these big companies and their executives that were focused on scaling across Africa were in the room. There was only 120 people, very selective. And we thought, hey, why could we potentially build a research component of the work that we do while we have these experts in the room and while we're asking them these questions about how to expand? So we said, why don't we produce an insights report from the summit and test whether people could actually would actually pay us for this potential service in the future? So we produced this like insights report, Africa at scale. We sent it to our email list of 60,000 subscribers who are usually like operators in this tech space. It costs about $3,000 to hire a team, design it, get it done, and also our team time. And the interesting thing was, on the surface, it looked strong. We had 331 downloads within a week, which is 3 times our target. We had really strong engagement and feedback. We had 2 qualified conversations for research support, and 1 conversion, not for research, but for another event sponsorship. What we realized was Insights had value, but it didn't make us money. And as a standalone product, we don't think that this is a viable business line to go build. So it works really well as a credibility and sales acceleration piece or as an add-on, but not as a standalone product. And so we decided, okay, we're not going to invest resources or try to hire a team to build out an insights product, even though we really had a feeling that that would be viable or valuable for us. So I guess the lesson here is you want to test for revenue behavior early because everyone has great ideas, everyone thinks they're great, but like really what matters is do customers pay you? And if they don't, then you don't have a business. So that's how we think about building these sort of products and services at Tech Safari. I think that's a wrap.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Caleb. Just hang around with me a little bit. We'll take questions. So we're going to actually sit with a speaker before we go on to the next. So if you have questions for Caleb, feel free to pop your hands right now. But I have a question for you, Caleb, right? For the Insights report specifically, it had 3 times the planned number of downloads that you had targeted, right? But yet you did not continue. So what metrics was the most important to you? And that goes on to a broader question of what metrics should you be tracking in a good revenue experiment?
Yeah, I mean, if it's a revenue experiment, it's literally revenue. So, okay, how much money do you make from this? Or what sort of pipeline addition does this add to your pipeline? And how does this add as a valuable service? Sometimes you don't make money from things immediately, and that's okay. But you need a really strong pathway or like indicators that you will eventually make money from the things you invest your time and effort into. And the biggest resource that we don't have at our company is actually time. We're a very small team, and we have to really pick our battles and pick the things that we double down on and like invest in. Okay,
so everyone is thinking about, you have this 30-minute model, right? It's for building out an MVT. What are the core ingredients that makes a good revenue experiment? Like 3 things, not more than 3 things.
Okay, cool. Core things. I think the first is actually speed. So how quickly can you test this? And what's like a proxy for whether this thing is valuable or not? So you don't want to spend 6 months preparing to launch a product that doesn't work. That's a waste of time. I don't think media companies have the time or space for that. So how do you test that it can work immediately through revenue? The second is probably like getting quick customer feedback. So there needs to be like actually space in between having an idea and getting quick feedback from people. But you can usually get quick feedback within a day without like by knowing the right people or calling the right people or putting them on calls. So it's doing it quickly, it's getting feedback. And then the third is like launching. So having the distribution channels to go launch this. Usually as media businesses, you do have embedded distribution, so that helps. But you want to make sure that when you go live with something, you're getting it into the hands of people who could potentially be users.
Sales, not service. I like that phrase that you use. Thank you so much. Any questions I can take maximum 2 questions for Caleb. I see one at the back. Real quick. Yeah.
Hello, Caleb. My name is Sylvia Jemutai. One of actually your newsletter subscribers. I am a search and AI visibility strategist. And over the past 5 years, I've been working with companies across the globe. And reading your newsletters, I have a question for you. I've been trying to understand if companies across Africa are really losing on revenue because of visibility. I'm trying to research if visibility can be used as one of the strategies to put out African companies out there. And using an example, I would say, looking at maybe the souvenir and the industry. Like we have a lot of artisans across the country who produce really good products. And when you get to meet them in person, they have really good stories. But when you go to the market or travel abroad and research, you're going to find someone from Britain, some from US selling the products. And my conclusion was, as a search engine person, the people who are found and who have priority and market access tend to be the middlemen, I would say, and the lot miss out on Africa. Do you think there's something that could be done about that, or it's just like businesses really understanding the importance of search and AI visibility?
Okay.
Cool. Yeah, that's an awesome question. I really love that question. So also, thanks for reading Tech Safari. I appreciate it as a newsletter reader. So I think that one of the things that is missing here is, you said it yourself, like you have middlemen who are able to like tap into a market here and sell goods. but then they have connections globally. And so I think the gap to be bridged is how do you then help people like on the ground have access to those global opportunities? There's a lot of business to be made in like being a middleman actually, and there's quite a few interesting platforms that are trying to do this for artisans. There's a company called Anka, which is a marketplace model, ANKA, for like fashion across Africa, but plugging that into like global retailers. There's also a company called Powered by People that does this. So it's definitely big. I think it's a bit less about visibility like SEO optimization or media. It's actually more about relationships. It's not like, can I make 1 or 2 sales a day by being visible online. It's more like, can I have a relationship with a wholesaler like Costco or Walmart or something like this where I actually have mass distribution, and that's where I think there's a lot of opportunity. But yeah, I mean, even in media, I think a lot of the media businesses just having connections and understanding a space and selling that expertise or that knowledge or those connections itself. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Caleb. I will jump to my second speaker right now, Beza. Beza, I'll let you introduce yourself. But one of the things I really like about her experiments is that they did not assume that audience growth is equals to revenue growth. I'll let her talk a little more about that. Beza?
Hi. So my name is Beza Dait. I am from Wazema Media, Ethiopia. A little bit about Wazema first. So Wazema was established in 2014 by exiled journalists. So a journalist who's been working in the journalism environment for over 20 years. So we focus on public interest journalism, and we've established ourselves as a credible source of information. So this is our number so that you could get an idea of it. But even though we established ourselves as a credible source of information, realistically talking, we weren't making any money. We are heavily dependent on funds, 100% depending on funds. And so with the change coming, with the government change in 2020, we registered in Ethiopia, and we were supposed to, register as we couldn't register as a non-profit organization in Ethiopia, and media can't be registered as a non-profit organization. So all the project money that were coming in was taxed heavily, and it was really hard to survive. So we really had to think of ways to make money and to increase our revenue, basically. So we experimented on so many things. First, we tried sponsorships and advertisements. But when you do news and deep dives, it's really hard to get sponsorships and advertisements. And even when you get those, it's really hard doing your news without someone telling you what to do or someone telling you what not to do. So we had to think away from the traditional sponsorship and advertisement and really think what do we have and what can we sell. So when we did a broad scan of our audience research and our content, what we noticed is that we had the trust. We had the trust of the audience. So what that meant was we can deliver specialized news analysis and insights. So we went back and tried to figure out who our target audiences would be. So again, that goes back to the broad audience scan, and we tried to understand who they were, where they were watching us from, and would they be able to pay for content if asked for. So we started newsletter subscriptions. But what we did with the newsletter subscription is specifically value-based, and our target audiences were the diplomatic community, the academic and research institutions, non-profit organizations, and corporate and policy. So what we thought was, we're still going after subscriptions of individuals, but it was easier to get subscriptions from organizations, especially when it comes to embassies. They want to know what's going on in the country. They want the insights. They want the deep dives. So those were our target customers. So this is how the product is structured. So we have a free newsletter that is the daily news briefs and the summaries. But for the paid subscription, we have exclusive reports and insight scoops. And we are also experimenting with Telegram, but the payment system in Ethiopia is a bit tricky. So we don't have cards, like it's a bit tricky. So this is an experimental phase, but we're using the Telegram as for a growth platform because most people in Ethiopia do use Telegram. Telegram is really big there. So we can attract people to our newsletter from the Telegrams. So what we thought our competitive advantage was, like I said, we have the trust of the audience, and we have strong expertise in geopolitics and political analysis. So what we tried to do was, because we didn't have a lot of money, we couldn't hire a lot of people coming in. So we had to use the resources that we had in-house. And the resources were that we have experts of geopolitics, which really worked in our favors. So this is the revenue model. So this is what I wanted to show. So we started the paid subscription in November, so it's fairly new. But as you can see, there's a promising revenue growth. And even with us introducing a paywall, the subscription is growing. So that really proved to us that paying for content is not like a no-no for the people, as long as you're providing quality content. So this is the metrics. We have rapid revenue scaling. Granted, it's new, but as you can see, in the 90 days, that's how much we made. And also, there's a growth in the audience. So this is the lessons we learned. So first is like the most important thing is the trust. That's what we're selling. And the second is the professional audiences really do value insights and are willing to pay for the journalists' insight and what you can do for them and how you can break down the news for them. And the third is small media can really build sustainable revenue. As we said, we're a really small team. We're 5 right now. And we're doing everything, yeah. And direct relationship with audience is really important. Yeah, this is our future plans. We're really planning on to work on improving Telegram integration because we do believe that we can generate revenue from Telegram, but we have to work around the payment issues when it comes to Ethiopia. And we're developing specialized reports because our paying audience should really get what their money's worth, and obviously strengthening our revenue system. Yeah, so this is it.
Thank you so much, Beza. Them heels, right? Yeah. Okay, so I think I'll just start with the first thing. I think I was reading the audience to say, I want to push you back to the revenue model. You kind of skipped that, but yeah, talk us through what the revenue model for this experiment is.
Based on the stories we do for them is how we set up the revenue, and we have different contracts with different organizations. Mm-hmm. As I said, it's value based, and that's when they come asking for it, okay, we're providing that for them.
Okay, so what assumptions did you set out to test by launching this experiment product in a sense?
Yeah, we had newsletters and we also had Substack subscriptions that were growing. And we had newsletters previously, but it stopped again because we have a very small team and we couldn't do the deep dives. But then we experimented with a lot of things, as you know.
Important, yeah.
Yeah, we experimented with a lot of things, but as I said before, when it comes to payment setups in Ethiopia, it's really tricky. So we had to shift our focus to the international community and also the diaspora communities. That's where we can get paid for views. Okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So the thing I like about experiments is that things almost fail almost half the time. Like you're putting out fires almost half the time, and that is the resilience, that gives you the resilience that you need to build a strong product. So during the development and launch of this experiment, what are the things that almost failed, and how did you navigate around that?
Yeah, the first was asking our reporters to do more work.
Good idea.
Because as I said, we're a small team as it is. Yeah, I mean, doing the deep dives and the insight was a bit tricky, but we came to an understanding in the conversation. And the second is approaching the people, the organizations. Mm-hmm. So at first I was doing it in person, going door to door and doing it in person, which is not attainable. Yeah. So it took time. It took a lot of time for us to get the subscription. But now I think we have it down. Yeah. We've built a network, so that's trickling down to the subscriptions.
Okay. Thank you for sharing. Any questions very quickly? One for Beza.
Thank you so much. It's a good presentation, Benza. And my name is Chol. I manage community radio stations in South Sudan. My question is on the audience behavior. In Africa, most audience like to consume content without paying. And that's the problem. When you put like someone has to subscribe, and then you will see the audience will now switch to a free content. How does that really affect your work in Ethiopia, given the level of digital payments also, which is another problem in many African countries? Thank you.
Do we have another question? I think we're almost out of time.
Oh, okay. So payment for content almost does not exist in Ethiopia. People do not like paying for content. So that's why our target audience became the organizations. Our target audience is essentially the expats and the organizations, because the people in Ethiopia do not like to pay for content. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Beza. Thank you for that presentation. Our third speaker, who at some point I was very scared I would not see. Thank you so much for joining us. Dan Aseda is the CEO of the very legendary Semabox that you guys see all around, and he's here to share a few experiments that have worked from his organization. Thank you, Dan. Guys, it's a big thing. We pulled Dan away from the cameras.
I don't know if it's still morning. Good afternoon. Hello. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to stand before you today. My name is Dan Aseda, and I have the wonderful pleasure of leading a fantastic team that's all around you today here with the cameras. This is Semabox. We were founded in Nairobi. We are actually incubated by Baraza Media Lab. And so we are a Baraza baby. Incubated, started back in 2021, and we started primarily as a creator-focused infrastructure provider. So we provide real estate, technology, and teams for you to create consistently. And then nowadays, we put you on a path to monetization. And some of the things that we've been able to do, and I can just run quickly through them, is right now we maintain well over 4,000 episodes. Some of this data is quite old. Those of you that are Kenyan will know why we give old data. We have crossed 165 million global listeners on all the podcasts that we have made across every creator that we've worked with over the last 4.5 years, 5 years. We have 400 creators in 6 African countries, and right now we maintain production capacity in Nairobi, Kisumu, Mombasa, Johannesburg, Lusaka, Kampala, and Kigali. So if you're working in any of those cities, we can help you directly. And then we also have affiliate studios that we work with in some other countries, and we can get some of the Summerbox services through an affiliate in those countries. One of the things that we were really interested in at the beginning was always to find a way to get revenue to creators. And so by the end of 2024, we had crossed $148,000, which we had paid out to creators through different monetization strategies that we've been following through the podcasts. And so that's kind of how we've cut our teeth. Around 2022, we started also to work on ideas that we thought would change mainstream media, because most of our work was in digital media. And so one of the biggest experiments we did was with someone you've seen here today. That's Mark Masai. We built a product called the Social Newsroom, which is hosted by Mark. The Social Newsroom is basically a newsroom-style product that exists exclusively on social networks. And so it has two formats, which is, well, let me go through this first. So it has two formats. One is that we have interviews and conversations, which we do every week, and then we have the town hall format. The town hall format is important in our story because in the last 4 or 5 years, you might have run into 1,000 town halls in Nairobi, done by media houses all over Kenya, which is why we see ourselves as the R&D department for Kenya Media, because we brought everything to do with the town halls was brought by Summerbox. We were the first ones to do it in the last 2 years. The format is something that we pioneered, and we're very excited that everybody has picked it up because it's continuing to grow. And our biggest goal was to bring regular people's voices into the newsroom, because what was happening in Kenya at the time was always talking heads. So you'd have a presenter and you had 4 people from the different political parties, and that would be a huge argument for 3.5 hours. Nobody talked about any real issues. So we tried to put that around by bringing actually regular people into the room. And so the shows are pretty long, 3.5 hours, sometimes 4 hours. We curated to have 60 to 100 people, and we tried to get the microphone to everybody. So it's a huge production effort. I want to talk a little bit about what we ended up doing was to try and always be ahead of the agenda and not behind it. By that, I mean we are always looking for stories or conversations that we think are going to be important later, not necessarily right now. And that's kind of what has guided the editorial. I have to say that I am standing here in place of a very talented colleague of mine called Brian Obara, who unfortunately cannot make it today because he's indisposed due to a personal matter. But he is the brain who really pushed the editorial around the Social Newsroom. And if you know anything about Brian Obara, he also pioneered another wonderful Kenyan show, which is called The Situation Room on KTN. Brian Obara was the person who created that show and built it to what it is now. And then when he left the Sana Group, he came to Summerbox, and we started to play about ideas to translate this current affairs programming to the social space. Our demographic is kind of pretty wide for the people that we target, but we do lean towards targeting people in the lower 20s because we've noticed from podcasting that they are the kind of agenda-setting demographic that listens to us and the work that we are doing. So we began to the audience that we were already in and then went out. And this is some more stuff about how we look at our audiences. But this is our numbers and what we've done. We are able to reach 1 million impressions monthly, around about that. And then also trying to take weekly listens was the interesting one. But for us, all of this was kind of cosmetic because what we really wanted to get into was a short form. So now we're experimenting with what we call the news note. The news note is a 2.5-minute story that we put out once a week, although we've been a bit slow about it, so now it's like once a month. But the story goes out, it's 100% done by, as much as possible, an unknown reporter, a reporter that you don't know, to try and center the story, to try and make the story as real as possible. The first edition of this was done by Ademba, and it went out, it's about a police brutality story, which is well over 2 million listens across everywhere. And also he's kind of become a little bit of a celebrity now, which we're very proud about. And then also we've noticed that mainstream guys have also adopted the same story. So again, we're really happy to be R&D department as we keep going. Some of this is what we try to push for us is stakeholder content creation, that we really focus on the source of the story as opposed to how the story can be told. And then the second one is that we are really also important in that collaborative approach. I'll say one last thing about the revenue. I didn't put it here. Social Newsroom is already in revenue, and we are consistently in revenue. But one of the things that we have learned about the Social Newsroom as we have been building it is that the people who are the customer, the person who pays, is not always the direct user. So for us, that's been a very clear learning that people who are interested in using our stories and consuming our stories necessarily don't want to pay, but there is somebody who is willing to. And so we focused a lot on getting customers who are interested in supporting the project or paying for the project to go out. But, and this is the critical thing, we have tried as much as we could to insulate the editorial decision-making from the customer. And this is an age-old challenge for any media house, but we've really worked hard on trying to keep that as rigid as possible from our side. So Brian controls 100% of what goes on the shows, but every once in a while we have a collaboration with an organization or with a community who wants to get their story told, and we work with them. And if there's a way that they're willing to pay for it, we are happy to take that. It's been a wonderful ride so far. The team over here is learning to produce this more and more. I will say, lastly, that when it comes to what we are also seeing in terms of the digital space, how things are growing and moving in Africa is totally different to how things are moved in other spaces. And what has been a very important final thing I would add in this conversation is what the Social Newsroom achieved for us, or what we consider as a learning, is we're able to close the feedback loop between the time the customer pays for something and when we can give them the results. And that's because the digital platforms can give us results much faster. So as opposed to printing a newspaper in the morning and then trying to count circulation in the evening, it's easier for us to give the data, statistics, any types of analytics much faster because we're leveraging social platforms that already have these things built in. And that's been the lesson that we've been learning at Semabox.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dan. If you could just hang here with me for a little bit. Okay, so I want to start with the last point that you raised, which is differentiating the customer from the user. How did you, at what point did you identify that these needed to be separate? And how did you identify who your customers are and who your users are?
Yeah, so it was kind of simpler for us because we're coming from podcasting. And podcasting, by default, is a free medium. So we always knew that the medium itself was always going to be that way. And we were also leveraging on that existing audience to try and have them cross over into the newsy kind of mainstream product. So it was clear to us that we're going to have to explore different freemium models. And that was the beginning point. In terms of who the customers ended up being, this became... our first customer was for the Social Newsroom, who placed a story or asked us to do coverage on a specific issue, was actually just a friend. So who saw that what we were doing and said, hey, I think I have a story about this and I think I'd like to cover. It was lucky that the topic was a topic that myself and Brian are also partial to. And so it was easy for us to do that. And what he offered us was, I'll pay for the production, but I think it's an important conversation to be had. Please make sure that you can do it justice. And I think that's what was important. In terms of the journey, how we continue to identify customers, that's just something that's evolving. There are some people that we've said no to.
Why?
The politics. We, by definition, we avoid politically placed conversations. We will accept community-placed conversations, but so if a politician calls us and says they want a conversation, we'll say no by default. So that's why we've said no.
Awesome. And so one more thing if I go to the audience is to say, it seems as though the entire organization is built around this consistent product thinking approach. So how do you structure your operations to ensure that you continue to roam on this kind of short-term based, highly product-driven approach?
Yeah, I guess I could bring it down to a philosophy, and I don't own this quote, but somebody, I'm sure it belongs to someone out there in the world, make it exist first, and then you can make it good later. So, which is something that we have tried to. Our first town hall was terrible. I think we had moving cameras, somebody fell down, it's just real big problems. Now we're really good at town halls, but it exists so we can make it better. And that's enabled us to do the things we do. Also, everybody at Semabox, as we say, everybody except the last person who joined us, who is an accountant, everybody at Semabox is a producer by default. We have no other department at Semabox. It is a production company. We produce content. So if you're a communication specialist, you're going to have to learn to work the cameras, and that's just what it is, except for the accountant, who is still resisting. But by next year, the accountant will be here with us. He'll be running the cameras as well. So that's been the basis that everybody produces, which means that whether the whole team is here or half the team is here, we're always producing.
Just don't let the accountants be on the cameras by the 25th or something, you know. Thank you so much, Dan, for sharing. Any questions? Okay.
Hi, I'm Brian from Kenyan Vibe. I just have one question. Since you mentioned that you don't have political conversations, does it mean that, especially the fact that your main demographic is mainly full of Gen Zs, and that's the one area that Gen Zs don't really talk about, yet we are headed to a political year next year. So does it mean that you won't have any contribution to inform your audience about political stuff?
So it's a great question. It's an opportunity for me to clarify. We hold a lot of political conversations on the show. We just don't accept any payment for it. So you cannot pay us to do a political conversation. We can have that if it comes from the editors or if it comes from a community. Incidentally, at the 2024 protest, if you remember, the biggest town hall was the Semabox town hall. And we pushed that very aggressively. And then the next week, the president had a town hall. So very happy. Also, there are some phone calls during that town hall that I can't discuss today.
Awesome. Any other questions?
Hello, my name is Saada. I'm Ethiopian. Hi, Baza. But I live in Amsterdam, where I run the only black-owned magazine in the country called One World, and we focus on journalism for justice. One of the things I didn't hear anybody say is advertising. So speaking of content, a lot of our content is very politically loaded and also very critical of politics and society. So we don't do any traditional advertising. We do have a job board, which is a big income stream for us. So I haven't heard from the three of you what type of, well, most from you, but what the type of content is that you produce and how is that connected to advertisement and how easy or difficult is that?
I think this is a good place to move to, group conversations. But you could start off with the answer, Dan. Yeah.
So for us, our entire model has ignored traditional advertising. We work on the sponsorship and collaboration model, which is still advertising, but by another style. But it is not possible to buy an advert on any of the Semabox produced shows. We have experimented with direct advertising for our podcast creators, where you can buy a placement to appear on a podcast, and that has not worked to great success yet, but that product does exist.
Okay, cool. Yeah, on our side, we don't see media as actually a revenue stream for us. We see that as kind of a platform to build connections, build distribution, then build products and services next to it. So one of our biggest and fastest growing income streams is we have a recruitment business that does mid-level recruitment in the tech space. We built it alongside an executive search firm that's quite big in Africa called Shortlist. And so that's a very different business. But the reason we can do our job so well is because we know all the tech companies. They read our content, and then we know all the talent because we have their details because they subscribe to our newsletter. So similarly, like we're building products and services off the back of media, but not monetizing media that much itself. If you look at our revenue goals, I think media will be like 20% of our revenue, while the rest will be like events, services, recruitment.
Awesome. Beza?
I think I've mentioned it earlier when I was talking about advertisement and sponsorships. That did not work for us because of mostly our content. We do breaking news, current affairs, discussions, deep dives. What ends up happening is sometimes when you have sponsors and you do some type of story, maybe they don't want to align with you, so maybe that kind of affect your content. So to keep the integrity of our content, we decided to keep our content and sell what we have and find audiences who are willing to pay for it as it is, without compromising the integrity of it.
Thank you so much, guys. I have a question now for you all. And if I could take maybe one volunteer. Can you all hear me? Okay. I could take maybe one volunteer who wants to share. Given all of the insight that has been shared right now, is anyone thinking what one specific revenue experiment can you try within the next 90 days? Not within 6 months, not 3 years. You're not going to go to the board with it. You don't need to hire anybody. Very clear, very simple MVTs. Like, Caleb said, what could you possibly try within the next 90 days? Show of hands, who wants to share? Okay, please.
Do I have to stand? Okay, hi. My name is Hadija Mbesa, and I work with Mtoto News. That is, our focus is children media, and right now we are coming up with a media product that is a platform for children's content that is, a safe space for children and parents, that children can actually access to information or content without their parents, panicking. What is my child going to look? The next minute, or an ad will come that is not child-friendly or some sort. So one revenue model I'm going to use is Bazaar, because right now we already have the content. So I'll say we are going to use the value model. So we need to see, we already have the content, we already have our users, I'll say millions in Africa. So we are going to see, are our users also our customers? I think also Caleb mentioned that. Are your users also your customers? So we are going to use the value revenue model and see, are they really our customers, or are they just, people who, and thank you so much to you guys. This has been a very insightful session.
Thank you so much, Khadija. Anyone has any thoughts to share on her potential experiment? What kind of pitfalls do you think, especially you, Beza?
So what I suggest is first really doing the research on your audience. Just start with that. And so one thing I did was formed a questionnaire, a Google form questionnaire, and posted it on our sites, just to get to know our audiences and trying to get their feedback. I feel like that would really help you to really understand what you're working with.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Anyone else wants to share what they plan to experiment with within the next 90 days? I actually think 90 days is long. So 3 days, 30 days, there's a thing we used to do with, our partners across Amplify programs. So Amplify programs in MDIF is our special, in quote, incubator-style programs that provide a runway for organizations to test and experiment exactly what we see here. So anyone else wants to share what they plan to do potentially within the next 90 days? Going once, going twice. Okay.
Thank you. My name is Salif Nyambok. I am here under dual capacity. Professionally, I work in nonprofit as a social media officer, but I also have a podcast that I do on men's wellness called Sisi Wanaume. I am curious as to, I might tweak it a bit, but I am curious as to whether you think this format of having we see it a lot in Kenya, the dual person podcast, where two people are talking, is a viable strategy for growth and monetization within that space. And probably, Dan, you can speak a lot more to this, because it's a format that we do see quite a lot, and it's mentioned online that we are seeing the same group of people rotating around these different pods. Does it materialize into something that monetizes? Because for me, my format, I'm considering moving to that format, but I'm not sure in a way whether it monetizes directly.
There's a short answer and there's a long answer. For the long answer, I'll charge you, because Semabox probably has the largest amount of data on African podcasting. So we know a lot about what you're saying. But the short answer is yes. It monetizes quite well. The most highly monetized podcasts in Kenya are banter-style podcasts, where you get with a group of friends and you shout for 3 hours. It works, and you know the reason it works is because it's relatable to people who want something that they consider light. So if you're going to the market segment that wants light content, then it'll work for them. And a large section of the audience is interested in light content. I'll add for you one more layer. 3 years ago, YouTube, I don't know if it was 3 years ago, but some time ago, YouTube told us, all their YouTube partners across the world, that the most popular content genre on their platform was comedy. So everybody was going to the internet for comedy. So all the platforms are supercharging comedy. So TikTok especially, if you're in Kenya, the guys running the Kenyan TikTok were supercharging all the comedians. You are seeing every comedic video made today. You are going to see all of them if you watch just one. Because they were convinced that the number one motivation for somebody seeking content is comedy. And so they're supercharging it. Banter style fits quite well with comedy. So that's kind of together. Now, that doesn't mean you can't make money in other genres or other styles. You can. It just means that you're working in a context that's not necessarily skewed towards what you're making. So you have to use a different strategy. In our experience, we've seen very many different styles of podcasts monetize quite well. And so there's no limit to what you can achieve with what you're already doing. In fact, what I'll tell you for free before I charge you is that the most important thing about podcasting is authenticity. That's the most important driving force. If people can believe what you're saying, then you're halfway there.
Thank you so much, Dan. And we are running out of time, but I just want to round up with you all sharing maybe 1 minute reflections based off of your learnings and experience and all you shared. I've asked the audience a question, and some have shared, but what kind of advice, in quote, or perspective, more like, would you give to organizations, individuals trying to run a really focused 3-day, 30-day, 90-day revenue sprint, right? What kind of, perspective would you give? Let me start with you, Caleb.
Okay, cool. The first one is do it as quickly as you can. So opt for 3 days, 3 hours if you can. But with this stuff, because we don't have time as small businesses or even big ones, it's important that you're trying to move quickly and try to understand, does this work quickly or not? And that involves like removing your bias or how much you want a product to work from the actual facts of whether it's working when it comes to revenue or growth. So yeah, first one is do it quickly, and the second one is really just like sit down with your customers and try to understand, is this something that they would buy? Would they put money down now? Not just do they think it sounds good or looks good, but would they purchase this thing? I think those two things, and you'll probably do a great job of testing new products.
Lisa?
The first thing is don't be afraid of experiments. I feel like most journalists specifically shy away from experimenting, or they don't want to try new things. So don't be afraid to experiment. And the second thing is have realistic expectations. So when you're experimenting, experiment with the employees that you do have, the budget that you do have. So keep it realistic, and then maybe you can go from there. So when you're experimenting, so that you don't put a lot of money into it or a lot of energy into it, and if it fails, then it would be a waste. So just keep it realistic. Yeah.
Awesome. Dan?
I guess I would borrow something that I learned from James Smart of the Nation Media Group. You have to be willing to lose some money as well. We did Kenya's most expensive podcast in history. Do you guys know which one it is? It's called A Country of Gamblers. It was a story of SportPesa in Kenya. Please check it out. It lost the Nation Media Group 165 million shillings because the SportPesa pulled their advertising. But they kept the story, and now Nation has the largest commercially viable audio platform in Africa. So they lost that money, but they made a lot more elsewhere.
Fabulous. Thank you all so much for sharing your insights, and thank you for being an engaged audience. If you have any follow-up questions, these guys are here. And yeah, let's continue the conversation. Karibu Sana again. Hey, I got it. Asante Sana. Thank you.